Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the new and grabby Hecahands and the place where all illusion decks go to die, Chimera. These archetypes actually play very well together, with both being control decks that are great at clogging up the board and neutralizing the opponent's ability to use the battle phase. But they also shore up each other's weaknesses, with Chimera generating a ton of value every turn, but not putting a whole lot of disruptions on board, and Hecahands putting up some powerful counter traps but not having too great of a grind game. So if frustrating your opponents to death sounds fun to you, let's get started. So first up is the Chimera engine. We're a fusion deck on all fronts, but Chimera is a very classical style of fusion deck that just uses materials from hand and field, but similar to Shaddolls or Dracotail, they generate massive value from the cards used as material. The quirk here is that our fusion requirements are a bit more restrictive than most modern fusion decks. We need beasts, fiends, and illusions, and we can't use two of the same type for our main targets. That means we need a good spread of types. The Hecas cover us for illusions, but I've added some supplemental fiends we'll discuss later to bring up our numbers. The other quirk for Chimera, specifically in Genesys, is that while the simplest core of it is unpointed, one of our most important disruptions / boss monsters costs 33, and our consistency cards also cost a ton. That puts us in this weird situation where we can play it as a low point cost supplementary engine and just play a ton of hand traps, but that makes our consistency pretty awful. Or we can pay a bunch of points and play a lot less non-engine to bring that consistency up to adequate, which is the route I choose here. Honestly, because we need types to fuse with and there's no good Fiend and Beast hand traps, I don't really love that build of the deck, and we're pretty good at breaking a board in engine anyways. With that out of the way, let's get into the individual cards. Mirror Swordknight is the one card combo for Chimera, and the pointed consistency cards just represent 6 more copies of him that we can't max out on. He has illusion text, which we'll see a lot of here, and just says that if it battles an opponent's monster, neither of them can be destroyed. That's one of the big ways we clog up the board and buy ourselves time to outgrind the opponent. His other effects are even better though. He can tribute from field as a quick effect to summon a monster from the deck that mentions Chimera Fusion. There's only a couple of targets, but we only really need the one really good one. And then lastly, if we have a Chimera on field and the knight is in grave, we can banish it to negate a monster effect. Next up is our one beast, Gazelle. Gazelle is level 4, and when normal or special summon lets you add a level 5 fiend or a Chimera Fusion to hand. That seems oddly specific because it is. See, this is one of those weird archetypes that isn't held together by a name, but by common text on the cards themselves, and it leaves it with enough wiggle room to search other non-archetypal cards. Case in point, Gazelle's second ability, which searches any illusion from deck to hand when it gets used as fusion material and gets sent to graveyard. This lets us bridge into the Hecahands cards if we don't open access to them, or grab Swordknight if we still have a normal summon available. I sort of consider Gazelle a one-card starter, but you have to have an illusion in hand to make it work. We just have a ton of those, so it's not hard to accomplish. Baphomet is a real nasty piece of work. On normal or special summon, he can search both a level 4 beast and Chimera Fusion to hand. Sounds great. Gets you Gazelle and the fusion so you can just pop off, right? Well, yes and no. See, Burfy Boy here is a level 5, which means you can't just normal summon him and get off to the races. You need to summon him off Swordknight, or manage to special summon something, then tribute over it for his normal summon. That's right, this deck routinely tribute summons in the year of our Lord 2026. His other effect isn't quite as impactful as Gazelle's, but if used as fusion material, he can reborn an illusion from the grave. Last for the Chimera engine, and our only spell trap, is Chimera Fusion itself. It's polymerization with some fancy accessories. It's a quick effect so you can use it on the opponent's turn, which is great. It's not once per turn, and you can fuse into anything as long as you use a beast or a fiend as part of the materials. That's one big reason I feel like we need to shore up the fiend count in the deck. It can also add itself back from grave once per turn as long as you have a Chimera on field or in grave. It can also, God forbid, banish itself to summon OG Vanilla Gazelle and OG Vanilla Baphomet from your deck, which we're not doing. This card is our glue, letting you fusion summon 2 to 3 to 4 times in a turn and hopefully leave one set for the opponent's turn as well. Next we're on to the Hecahands, which are a little more straightforward but not much. They're all high-level illusions that involve stealing cards from the opponent, and all have illusion text to make the battle phase a nightmare for them as well. Starting with Yadel, who can reveal in hand, shuffle herself back into the deck, then add a spell trap. If sent to the grave, you can set a Hecahands spell trap from grave, so she's not a bad foolish target or fusion material. Similarly, Ibtel can shuffle in to summon a Heca monster from deck, and if sent to grave lets you reborn one as well. The actual Hecahands that we want to summon start with Godus. Illusion text across the board, and they all summon from hand if the opponent adds a card to their hand to sort of act as Hecahand traps. Godus specifically is the only one with a quick effect, so you can actually use it as a hand trap on the opponent's turn, and lets you reborn an opponent's monster to your field to be kind of a DD Crow with upside, which is why he's at 3. The other ones are at 1, but they're still good. Brius is the high roller of the bunch and can look at a random card in your opponent's hand and summon it to your field if it's a monster. Yep, that's a hand rip with upside, but only if you hit. Otherwise, your consolation prize is a bit of hand knowledge, and that's it. Gygus is much easier to hit with, and our first pointed card at a paltry 5. He can look at the top 3 of the opponent's deck and summon one for you. This is your standard summon off of Ibtel because it's the most likely to actually get you that extra material. For spells, we have 3 hidden Hecahands. This card is a Rhoda, and if you have another card on field to send on activation, you can also then set a spell trap from the deck as well. It can also banish from grave to make the opponent draw and discard, which triggers the summon condition of the Hecahand bodies to give you more on board. Last for spells is 1 Tartarus, which has 1 useless effect and 1 good effect. First up, it can bounce a spell trap, but you have to have a Heca on board already, so it's like not great most of the time. But it's also just Miracle Fusion for Hecahands, letting you banish materials from field or grave, and if you use an opponent's monster you control, you can treat it as a Hecahand card for the fusion requirements. We just searched the one when we need to make our big fusion boss, since our search power in Hecahands is absolutely crazy. Last up are our traps. We have 1 Yadal and 1 Ibal, which are counter traps that need a Heca on field but negate. And then Yadal is for spells and traps, Ibal is for monsters, so you want to get both on field if you can. And they also both yoink the card that they counter as well. So if you use Yadal to negate a spell trap, you can then set it to your back row. Or if you negate a monster, you can just special summon it. These shore up our end board immensely and are both quite easily searched. Next up, I'm playing a Mutiny in the Sky package for some extra fiend names, which I'm surprised to say I haven't really seen other people doing since they fit here perfectly. Rhino Warrior, when sent to grave by any means, be it from deck or as fusion material or what have you, can foolish another fiend. That targets Buio, which can have a couple of useful effects. If it is in hand, you can negate a fiend on field, say your Baphomet, to summon him out, and then while he's on board, your left and right monster zones can't be destroyed by card effects. More importantly than those, though, is when sent to grave, he searches Mutiny in the Sky. This is another Miracle Fusion, but for fiends and fairies specifically. The idea being that you can open Rhino and use it to fuse, or you can foolish it as part of your combo to foolish the Buio to get Mutiny online with 2 fiends already engraved to use as material. This lets us access a couple very powerful cards out of the extra deck. Nightmare Apprentice is one of Chimera's consistency cards, but at a whopping 20 points each, we can't afford more than 2. She discards a card in hand to summon herself and then add any illusion from the deck, then just has illusion text to help stall, or you can use her as fusion material. The other consistency card we aren't playing at all is Cornfield Quaddle, which is an extravagant 33 points each, and just discards to add Swordknight to hand primarily. 1 Poly in here helps to make sure we can find a fusion spell to get started. You can play more or less of them, but I find that 1 to 2 copies helps our consistency a lot. For non-engine, we don't and can't have much, but Radiant is an interesting tech card since Kaijus are unpointed, and it's a fiend that we can use as material if we end up going first. Otherwise, 3 somehow still free Ultimate Slayers round out our 40. For options, we have any illusion in the game. Diabells is a common one since we can foolish her then summon her back with Birth's effect to give an additional disruption and minor floodgate. Emissary is also a slightly spicier one, but it's the best battle fader probably ever printed and can steal games out of nowhere. For Fiend options, the only hand trap is Singularity Fiend, which I've seen some people play, but like, it's pretty bad outside of exactly White Forest. Capshell is more interesting since it's just a Fiend that draws one if you use it as material, but I don't really think extra draw power is what the deck needs. And then our point total is 88, so you can play with 12 extra points somewhere between the main and sideboard. It won't net you any extra engine, but you can play like 3 Dark Holes in the board or 2 Nibirus, which is pretty solid. Then for the extra deck, our first piece is Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, which becomes Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast on field or in grave. This one needs specifically a Beast and a Fiend, the intended materials being Gazelle and Baphomet. Your payoff is a hand rip, just a straight random discard on end phase from the opponent's hand, so that's cool. You can also banish it from grave to summon back any Fiend, Beast, or Illusion from grave. Tightening the opponent's resources while growing our own is the name of the game here, and this guy exemplifies that. Our most important card, however, is Baphomet, the Mythical King of Phantom Beasts, which becomes Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast on field or in grave, and when summoned lets you foolish one of the Chimera types from deck. That's how we send Rhino if we don't open it to use as fusion material, and how you set up Diabells if you opt into that card. Importantly, this guy just takes 2 different types instead of specifically a Beast and Fiend, so he's a lot easier to make and extends us like crazy. You can also banish it from grave to summon back a banished monster, so there's a bit of a loop here where you can use Chimera and Burf to just recover each other over and over. Chimera the Illusion Beast is our last Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast and just takes another Chimera and 1 or more illusions. The point of them all being Chimera on field and in grave is that any of these 3 on board fulfill the requirement for your cards that need a Chimera in rotation, like the Fusion or the Knight. So this guy is our closer, able to attack a number of times up to how many materials you used, and when it attacks, you can then drop the attacked monster's attack to 0 and negate its effects permanently. Since he has illusion text, that means any attack position monster the opponent so carelessly left on the field is just free lethal for us. Ersichthin is an out to indestructible cards and just sends one on summon. Duke is our most common mutiny target and gives you an extra normal summon, which is a way we can get Baphomet's on summon effect later in our combo. Jaza is our Hecahands Contact Fusion, and can either be fused normally with a Hecahands and an illusion monster, or contact fused with any illusion monster and an opponent's monster on your field. Illusion text for days, but it also lets you add any missing Hecahand card once per turn to help extend and maybe a little bit with the grind game. Loose is our other mutiny target that takes 3 fiends, which is normally Rhino, Buyo, and Baphomet, and protects your left and right monster zones, same as the Buyo himself, and he can also pop opponent's cards by foolishing a fiend from your deck, so that's both follow-up and disruption, but it isn't a quick effect sadly. He does still have a disruption on the opponent's turn though, since if your card gets destroyed, he can retaliate by destroying one of theirs. He's also just like really big, and you can't underestimate that. Magnum the Reliever is a utility card that's hard to summon but lets you use spent Chimera Fusions and Polymerizations in grave to draw and pop cards. Then Guardian Chimera is the most expensive card in the deck, and it's no wonder since when you fuse it with 3 different monsters, you get to draw cards based on how many you used in hand, and pop cards based on how many you used on the field. This is our Chimera Fusion target on the opponent's turn. Xeno is Hecahands' boss monster, and it's pretty high rolly like the rest of the archetype. You can look at 2 of the opponent's extra deck monsters randomly and summon one. This is a quick effect, so you can do it once each turn on yours and your opponent's. Now that may sound downright broken, and it is, sometimes. You see, you don't get any when synchro summoned or when fusion summoned effects this way, and some monsters can't be summoned except certain ways, normally the ones with the highest attack stats, so you can't take those. Worse is that Baphomet's on summon locks us into fusions for the turn, and we would really rather use him on both turns by reborning a Mirror Swordknight and then summoning him again to get extra material for follow-up. but that just kind of means that we can't summon certain things off of Xeno if we use that effect first and then Xeno later. Kind of weird. All this together just makes Xeno quite a bit worse than he reads, but sometimes you just rip an opponent's Dingirsu and you win the game on the spot. Garura is an ultimate Slayer target that draws us a card. And then speaking of Dingirsu, we have room for one Exes 6 that we can make a lot of the time, thanks to the Mutiny in the Sky package. And with Lars at 20 points, I like Crazy Beast the best. It has Din's protection effect to detach a material when a monster you control would be destroyed, to prevent that destruction, and it's not once per turn. You can also detach to attach the opponent's spell trap to him. So you yoink a field spell on activation, then you can detach it to protect your board. It's pretty nice. Aggregator is a Slayer target that negates, Malong is a Slayer target that bounces, and then we're on to some combos. Okay, so I mentioned in the deck profile that our 1/1 card combo is Mirror Swordknight, and that's what we're going to see here. So we're going to start by normal summoning Swordknight, tribute it to go summon Baphomet, which is going to search both Gazelle and Chimera Fusion, and we can immediately use the Chimera Fusion to go into our first version of Chimera for the hand rip, and to trigger a bunch of stuff so we can get back the Swordknight and add Ibtel, so that we can use the Ibtel to summon from deck the Gygus, which we can use to rip the top of the opponent's deck to get an extra material, so we can go into Jawza, so that we can use Jawza to go get Hidden Hecahands, and then we can activate Hidden Hecahands, sending off the Mirror Swordknight we reborn to set Yodel and add, to set Yod all and add Yodel. That's going to trigger the Yodel to reset the Hidden Hecahands, which we can't use again this turn, but it's good follow-up for next turn, and that's going to let us go into Baphomet, which is going to let us Foolish from the deck. So we're going to go ahead and set that Hidden Hecahands, and then we're going to Foolish Rhino Warrior, which Foolishes Booyah, which adds Mutiny in the Sky, which we can immediately activate because we have 3 Fiends in the graveyard to summon out Loose the Dusk's Dark, which is a pop on the opponent's turn if they destroy some of our cards. You saw there the hand rip, they just lose 1 automatically. Jawza's indestructible. Baphomet, if it gets sent to grave, will then be able to summon back a banished card. Well, we don't have any banished cards. Well, that's fine, because we can banish Chimera to bring back anything in grave. And that means that we can get back Mirror Swordknight, and then Mirror Swordknight contribute itself to summon the Baphomet from main deck to get us 2 extra materials for next turn. We don't manage to leave a Chimera Fusion set on this board, but that's still pretty fine. Like, we've got the 1 counter trap for whatever you think is most important. Normally it's going to be spell traps, in my opinion. But we've also got just like ways to cycle body after body and get follow-up, and our stuff is protected. Like, remember, both our Loose and our Jawza here can't be destroyed by card effects because they're in the left and right zones, which is pretty tight. So just tons of follow-up, lots of bodies, little bit of interaction. Love it. Okay, and then the only other combo I want to do is our primary 2-card combo, quote-unquote, which is just Gazelle plus any illusion name in the deck. So we're going to normal summon Gazelle, which allows us to get Chimera Fusion, and we can activate it to fusion summon into our extra deck, Baphomet, which is going to trigger the Gazelle to search us any illusion, which we can grab the Mirror Swordknight, and the Baphomet to send. But wait, why would you grab Mirror Swordknight? You've already used your normal summon. Don't worry about that, we'll take care of it. Because the Baphomet is going to send Rhino Warrior, which can send Booyah, which can add Mutiny in the Sky, which we can immediately activate to go into the Duke of Demise, which gives us an extra normal summon for the Mirror Swordknight. But thankfully we haven't used the effect of Baphomet on field yet, so we haven't been fusion locked, which means that we can use our 2/6s on board to go into the Goblin's Crazy Beast, and then we contribute the Sword Knight to go get Baphomet and Baphomet effect to add a Chimera Fusion plus the Gazelle, and then we can use 1 more fusion so that we can go into our hand rip Chimera and then summon back the Mirror Swordknight. So we can set the Chimera Fusion this time. We have an extra one off of this combo, so we do get to do that on the opponent's turn. And what we've got here is Destruction Protection and Sucking of spell traps off of the Crazy Beast. We can tribute the Mirror Swordknight to go get another Baphomet to search another Gazelle to search another Chimera Fusion for the next turn, but also kind of for this turn. Because once we do that, we have a monster in hand so that we can activate this Chimera Fusion to go into Guardian Chimera out of the extra deck to pop 2 and draw 1 card just for free, basically. And then if the Chimera gets destroyed, we can activate it to bring back anything from our graveyard, which can just be like Gazelle for follow-up. It can be the Goddess, which acts as an extra disruption because it can steal something from the opponent's graveyard. But also, once we use the Crazy Beast, we put Baphomet in the graveyard. So once we use Chimera, banishing itself to summon something back, and then put Burf in the graveyard off of Crazy Beast, we can use it to bring back the Chimera as well. So just like value, value, value. And then the Chimera, once it goes to grave again, can then bring something back again. Just whole big value loop set up there that just starts to trigger once we use the Crazy Beast and once Chimera gets destroyed. So, you know, this is, what, 3-4 pieces of disruption, but also so much follow-up, y'all. And we're back with closing thoughts on our Chimera deck. So, pros is that we outgrind basically anything. Like, Branded and Fire King's got nothing on this once we get going, and that's saying a lot. But the downside is just that we're so inconsistent in Genesys because they took away, like, even in this build, we're missing 4 1-card starters, which means we have to rely on 2-card combos, but I do kind of like a freestyle deck, and with the way that I have built this deck, we almost always have at least a 2-card combo, so that's not too bad. The things I do want to note is you should not underestimate the illusion text in here. It, especially in Genesys, battle matters a lot more, and just putting cards on the field that say, I automatically win battle, kind of really sucks for the opponent. 2 counter traps with upside is pretty tight. I love a deck that has a quick play that lets you dodge interaction. So 3 Chimera Fusions and them not being once per turn is like crazy good. What else can I say about that? I do wish that the Nightmare Apprentice, considering it has a cost, wasn't so expensive, or the Cornfield Coatl wasn't 33. I guess they just thought this deck would be oppressive. And maybe they're right, because this deck is good. It's quite playable as it is right now. So if the Cornfield was, 10 points, or Nightmare Apprentice was 10 points, or both, maybe the deck just goes too crazy. I don't know. But even then, you could just play full consistency, and with the 1 Guardian Chimera, oh no, you couldn't even play full consistency, because that'd be 60, 93, and then the 1 Xeno and the 1 Gygus, so you could cut the Xeno, the Xeno's not mandatory, but I like it. It's a fun card. It does funny haha things. I don't know. Case in point, I don't think Coatl and Apprentice need to be quite so highly pointed, but they definitely shouldn't be 0 because the deck is still quite good as is. Yeah. But anyways, that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.